Is it actually just too soon to know what the impact of this verdict really is on the 2024 presidential outcome?
No, it's soon enough to know that it's not going to significantly alter the results at this moment. Then, in fact, the two presidential debates are going to be more important, that the gains that Trump had made among union members, Hispanics, young African-American men are significant and they're holding, that Biden's gains among middle-aged female suburban voters, those are holding. And basically, this feels more like World War I. That is just simply a ground game. It's a war of attrition. And there simply isn't that big dramatic event that most people had expected if Donald Trump was and has been found guilty on all charges. And that's what I need to emphasize. The assumption was 90 days ago that if Donald Trump was found guilty, the bottom would drop out of his support. And that has not happened. He has weakened. People have started to reconsider whether or not they support him. But there's been no dramatic shift. And that in itself is a very big story.
I wonder what you think, speaking of big stories, and something we discussed earlier in that conversation with Mick Mulvaney about this migration from Joe Biden to Donald Trump when it comes to some black voters, and from what we're understanding by polls, in many cases, older male black voters. The logic, though, Frank, has been kind of thin for me. You're a student of history and an intellectual. Are we to believe that a conviction in this case and Donald Trump selling sneakers somehow moves black voters as a monolith?
No, the selling of sneakers, I don't know who came up with the idea. I think it was Trump himself, and it's ridiculous. And actually the young, and we don't have it among older black men. We have it among younger black men who appreciate Trump's attitude, that he's a baller, that he's tough, that he's fighting the system. I still think that's much less significant than the Latino vote, which is 19% of the voter bloc, twice as high as the African-American vote, and among union members, which is really important in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, which are the key states. And remind viewers, there are only 7 states in play. Trump is up in 4 of the 7 by 5 points or more. Nevada, Arizona, North Carolina, and Georgia. But he's virtually dead even in the other 3, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. If he wins the first 4, all of them, he's got 268 electoral votes, but you need 270 to win. So for Trump to be elected, follow Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, and all 3 of those states are too close to call.
Well, of course, we've seen President Biden spending a lot of time in those 3 states, Frank. And we've also seen President Biden spend a lot of time on this idea that Donald Trump is a danger to democracy, that democracy should be an issue that voters make their selection on come November. Does his conviction add more saliency to that argument, or is that not going to win out over things like the economy or the border?
Well, it does add more saliency, but it does so among Biden voters. If you're asking independents, swing voters, people who voted for Donald Trump once already, but not twice, people who voted for Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden, but are concerned about Biden's reelection, inflation, and what I say is affordability, is the #1 issue. Food and fuel, housing and health care. Making those more affordable is Biden's greatest weakness and Trump's greatest strength. The second issue is immigration, control of the border, fear of crime, fear of destabilization, and who comes across. That issue also benefits Donald Trump by about 10 points. Then the third issue is abortion, and that issue is particularly important among young women, and that could be enough in these key states to bring out young women who often don't vote in presidential contests, and that issue benefits Joe Biden. You get to democracy next. It's the 4th most important, the 4th most salient issue. But let's face it, when every vote counts in these key states, I'd rather be talking about immigration and inflation over abortion and democracy.
When Joe Biden is in Normandy later this week, though, Frank, he is going to be talking about democracy. I believe you're going to be there for the 80th anniversary of D-Day. This is a moment for him. Can he leverage that to draw the contrast between his campaign and one that has been associated at times with Nazi language, the Reich post that we saw recently, not to mention just the overall tenor of these two campaigns?
That's a great question. And as I've said always, the questions that you all ask in your interviews absolutely hit the mark. One of Ronald Reagan's greatest speeches was at Pointe du Hoc. And I get emotional when I think about it, because there were so many veterans that were alive then and are gone today. And Reagan used that speech to declare to the applause of Republicans, independents, and Democrats the superiority of the American system of government, the superiority of the American culture. And that's something that Joe Biden has not really been able to do. Is this a great opportunity for him? Absolutely. And the world will be watching. More importantly, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin will be watching. But still, the date that matters most in this conversation is June 27th, because that's going to be the day that decides who's going to be the next president.